I think Black Lives Matter and All Lives Matter are two completely different things. I think that by saying Black Lives Matter isn't saying only Black Lives Matter, it's putting an emphasis that, hey, we matter too, and that it's important. I think All Lives Matter is just separate from it. It's just saying that everyone does matter. And Black Lives Matter is just more emphasis on, like, we matter.
I as well believe Black Lives Matter. It's hard for me to take a stance on All Lives Matter, as it seems as though Black lives don't matter. And when things that do happen to Black people in society happen for the simple fact that they are Black, I think it's more important to force and push the idea that Black Lives Matter. It wasn't always the time where all lives were being oppressed and there were all lives that were being neglected or treating a certain unfair. It was all, since the beginning of the history of America, it's always been Black lives whose lives have said not to matter. So I think it's important to push the agenda that Black lives do matter, but not to negate it, saying that all lives do matter, but to also put forth an impetus that the only purpose of Black Lives Matter movement is just to show that these are the people who are taking a stand for something that they believe in, and one thing that we all believe in is equality, and I think that's the main purpose of the Black Lives Matters movement.
I think All Lives Matter kind of dismisses the point of Black Lives Matter, because the point is to say Black Lives Matter as well because they have been oppressed. But I think a lot of people don't realize that because it just is Black Lives Matter. But I think, I do agree with Black Lives Matter, but I think there are some, fundamental issues in the movement that need to be addressed in order to better represent their cause.
Well, all lives do matter, but right now, with what's going on, I do believe that the main focus is focused on Black lives because of how many different killings and stuff that have been going on. So they definitely matter right now.
I feel that Black lives have been oppressed, but then I feel like it shouldn't just be Black Lives Matter. I feel like it should be minority lives matter, because it's like the Chinese and the Irish came here and they were oppressed, and Hispanics or Latino people, they've been oppressed and they're also victims of police brutality. So I think it should be I get that Black Lives Matter is trying to promote the fact that there is police brutality and there are issues with minorities, but I think it should go towards a more general cause of helping minorities in general.
For that, I think people forget that Black Lives Matter was funded and started by Black people. We're focusing on our own causes as a community of Black people. Black Lives Matter doesn't mean people can't come out and say Latino lives matter as well, or Asian lives matter as well, but as a Black community and facing what we will all go through as Black people, what I will go through as a Black female, what he will go through as a Black male, those are the same. We have the same socio and economic disadvantages due to the fact that we are Black. So us putting emphasis on our lives as Black people is trying to form a common ground amongst all Black people. Yes, all minorities. It seems as though in America, many and almost all minorities have been oppressed in one way or another. But as Black people, we have come here to be oppressed. We have gradually gotten out of oppression in a sense, but still we're still held back. As I think most people think that Black Lives Matter is just focusing on police brutality. No, Black Lives Matter if it's police, if it's other Black people, if it's not a police officer. Black Lives Matter in the terms that we have disadvantages that are socio and economic. Black Lives Matter in the sense that there are things that I'm going to experience as a Black person. That's what we mean by Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter isn't trying to push aside other things that you might experience as an Asian, or why I think you're also white, or her as a biracial female. So we all have things that we are going to endure. We all have different stereotypes. But as the Black Lives Matter, we are acknowledging what are flaws in our own community and what are things that happen in our own community and things that we want to change individually. I feel as though if other people see things that are happening as minorities in their own separate, then you should form another group. You should get funding started towards that. You should make it, equality is something that we all deserve, and we shouldn't throw fire against one group because we're finally standing out against it. I think we should all come hand in hand with our Asian Lives Matter, our Latino Lives Matter, and our Black Lives Matter, and create something bigger so that we all can get what we want out of America or out of society.
Yeah, I believe Black Lives Matter as well as all other lives. I think every life matters, and Black Lives Matter I know is putting an emphasis on, hey, we matter too. And with all the police killings, you know, the movement's gaining a lot more popularity. But the movement also sometimes, you know, maybe some of the people in Black Lives Matter don't always, I guess, make the best decisions. You know, some people in or with the movement may do some things that probably don't represent the group correctly. So I think a lot of people misinterpret what the movement's about, and so that's why I think All Lives Matter formed, because they thought like people were trying to say, oh, only Black Lives Matter.
I think whether or not they are justified, I think this is what it's, I don't think they're doing it for justification as a result of the people who are being killed. I think it's a result of this is how angry we are. This is everybody, whenever somebody gets mad enough, they're going to go to extreme limits until something changes. This is the protests, the violent acts. This is us saying this has got to stop, bros. This is only it's gonna have to get a lot more worse before it can get any better. And just understand that these are the extremes that people are willing to go to get out of this state of oppression, out of our uncomfortable state because we're Black. It's supposed to be a voice, since I guess peaceful protests seem not to work as efficiently when things. I'm not condoning violence, but when things that are more drastic happen, people listen more. Actions are made faster, and that's what we want. We want it to be efficient, and we want it to be quick, and we want something to be done where it can be significant, where a movement like Black Lives Matter could be funding for colleges at some point, not funding to ensure that if a judicial system is better for that Blacks can get the type of justice that they deserve. You know, it could be something different, but there's different steps to take. I don't think I'm not somebody who justifies violence, but it's going to get there if things don't change.
I believe that to the degree of them having these protests and the violence that they're causing and that they're doing, I think that it isn't justifiable. But I do think that it's kind of like their last resort, or they believe that it's their last resort, because everything else that they're doing isn't bringing enough attention because things aren't actually changing. But I still think that the violence that they're creating and the protests that they're doing is also creating more stereotypes, and it's going to make people take them less serious, especially police. If police are the ones going into the protests and they're trying to calm everyone down, and they see all these Black people, all these African Americans fighting and creating all this violence, then I think they're gonna continue to have this stereotype, and maybe even worse, against Blacks, and they're going to be more cautious when they're around them, and it can cause even more issues with police brutality because of it.
The violence during the protest, they actually like gather attention and they get the headlines. When we act aggressive, it's like that's the only thing that captures attention. So like for us to act peaceful and like do peaceful protests, it's like it's not gathering enough attention and we're not getting that change. So like I feel like the aggression is just drawing more attention, and then when we do the peaceful protest, it kind of like just sums it all up. So I think it goes hand in hand.
Yeah, I agree. Like you guys are trying to make a statement, but I think acting in violence, I think like they're kind of setting you up. They want you guys to act in violence so that you guys make media attention for the wrong reasons. Of like you guys, let's say you just like injured a police officer or something. I'm just throwing out an example. I think they like are feeding off of those instances that happen and trying to like push those into the headlines. I think like if you guys can just, the movement could just be peaceful, like, and not give the media what it wants, because as long as there's something that occurs that's violent, there's going to be people that are against the movement that go, yep, there's the Black Lives Matter movement being violent again, and you'll never like fully bring everyone together.
I feel like as far as the violence part of the movement, as far as when the protests come out, it's not, oh, we're gathering around and we're protesting because I got followed in a supermarket, or because of racial profiling, I got pulled over because I'm Black. We're we're protesting because we have another hashtag. You know, it's another Trayvon Martin. It's somebody else that has been shot and killed due to police brutality, a form of violence that seems to be dismissed because, oh, I'm a police officer. At one point in time, it's aggravating when a police officer can get away with what it seems to be just murder and nothing. You know, when is our voice going to be heard? Do we have to say, oh, we don't like this, or we have to act on it? And even if you don't want, I feel like if we're not supposed to act on it, if we're not supposed to do these violent protests, somebody has to get convicted for the murder that they are doing towards the Black people. That's when we will get an awe, that's when we'll get a sense of relief. Okay, as Black people, we are protected by this justice system. Everybody's not against us, you know? If we are protesting against the people who are supposed to protect us, and we can't, and the only way to make a headline, to make a statement is to be violent, then that's what it's going to boil down to. If police officers can be violent, then why can't the civilians who are actually being harmed be violent as well? They're supposed to serve and protect, but they're not doing that. We're getting killed. We're making hashtags. Some of us are crying because we're losing people who we love, and then we relate to it in the sense that this could be my brother, this could be my dad, this could be a future son of mine. It has to stop somewhere along the line. And to say, oh, it's peaceful, it has to be peaceful, it has to be peaceful. Okay, yes, either it has to be peaceful. If it's going to be peaceful, then the justice system has to work for us in our favor when it needs to work. Otherwise, they're not going to go hand in hand. People aren't going to sit back and just say, oh, everything will work itself out, because as history has shown, everything is not going to work itself out if we're peaceful and we just sit back and just let, things happen. You know, stereotypes for Blacks have always existed. There's always going to be animosity between the races if we feel as though we're underrepresented, or if we feel as though we're not going to get the rights that we deserve due to the fact that we're Black. That's always going to be a part of society. And until that changes, you can't negate a movement because of the violent things that they're doing if we're acting out against violence itself. And of course you can't fight violence with violence, but there is a superior place that is the legal justice system, where the problems need to be solved if, for us as civilians and for the people who work for the government and society, are going to properly play their roles. The people who are in charge of the utmost of what goes down in society and in Black communities or interracial communities, it has to be some common ground that if somebody's going to get shot and killed by a police officer, this police officer is going to get convicted, because no Black person is getting off for killing another Black person. You know, there's that disconnect.
I do feel like it's an issue, and that there's a lot of police brutality that is specifically unjust and racist against Blacks. But I also think that some of the stories about police officers shooting and killing Blacks, I feel like a lot of the Black community is putting the complete blame on the police, but I don't think that they tell the whole story. And I can't give a specific example, but I do believe that it can be also partially the African American, the Black person's fault. It's not always just the police's fault.
As a trained police officer, if you are threatened or you're afraid of an unarmed person, you're dangerous. Your fear does a lot of things. If you have a gun in your hand and you're afraid of somebody who doesn't, what are you bound to do? You know, and as it has shown, this fear, it takes over these police officers who are armed, and then they end up killing somebody, an innocent person. You know, if they are doing something wrong, are they armed? No. They should leave the situation in handcuffs at most. You know, they deserve their trial for whatever they have done. And I think, to touch bases with the question, yes, of course, there's racism in the police world. You know, it has to be racism, because why else are Black people consistently getting shot for no reason other than the fact it seems that it's because the police officers are fearful because they are Black. So there's an impetus that I suppose that Black men are more intimidating, or they're scarier, or the crime rates. Of course, the statistics that show that Black men are committing most of the crime rates, but there's a fewer percentage of Black people. Of course, the statistics are going to show there's definitely racism in the police field, and I'm not sure. I don't have the answer to how to fix that, but I feel like if white police officers or whomever else committed a crime, a racially intended crime against a black person, knew that there were going to be consequences and not paid leave, or I get a fair, things that the police officers get acquitted for. I think there would be less of it. If you know that there's going to be a punishment for your crime and there's not instance after instance after instance where people who have done the same thing as you are going and have got off, then you would be less inclined and you'd think closer about the fact that I have a gun in my hand and this man does not. I'm not going to shoot. There shouldn't have to be things like hands up, don't shoot. Why is a person with their hands in the air getting shot and then losing their life? It doesn't make sense. And it's obviously because of the fact that they're black. So just the systematic racism, yes, they're taught to shoot, but are they senselessly shooting people? And it seems so.
I have to disagree. I definitely think there is some racism, but the true definition of racism is when you believe someone is less superior than you or like beneath you, and I don't think that's the reason why cops are killing innocent black people. I think it is because they're stereotyping, and while it's easy to say, like, why would you kill this man? He's not armed. Like, you're not in that situation. You're not a cop. You haven't experienced the things that cops have, and I feel that, yes, cops are trained and they should be used to this, but they're still human beings. And when you know the statistics, like, it is scary. Like, I would be scared if I was in the middle of a bad area and, like, I'm in a confrontation with someone. Whether they're black, whether they're white, like, it doesn't matter. Like, if you're a cop and you're constantly coming into confrontation with people who can be dangerous, like, I don't know, I think you would probably act irrationally at times. So maybe there needs to be more training and not training to shoot to kill. Maybe there needs to be more emphasis on using the taser or something else that is not going to kill someone. But I don't believe that they're doing this all because they're racist. And I think the whole, like, well, if you kill an innocent black person, like, we're going to show you, like, how we're going to react. I don't think that's the answer, because if you don't want to all be generalized as black and violent and by the statistics, then you can't generalize cops and kill an innocent policeman, because while you're making a point, you're doing the exact same thing as them.
So for there to be these alarming statistics against black that we commit so many crimes, white people could commit as many crimes. They probably commit more, but how do they get marked down for them? They don't, because it's doing it based off of population. There's a smaller number of us. If we do anything as the same rate or even a little bit more, it's going to be alarming in numbers. That's just how it works. And for a police officer to be afraid of a person when they are trained and they're in the work duty, in the workforce, to fight against crime, it's sad in a sense. It's kind of pathetic that you're afraid of what you are trained for, what you wanted to do. This is your job. Black people didn't sign up to get pulled over. I wasn't born. I didn't know that there were stereotypes against me until I was old enough to acknowledge and understand them. It's not necessarily the thought that you think that people are beneath you, but it just shows how there's certain things that black people have to do more of, and there's less of what white people have to do to show that we are equal, That's the racism that exists, that because of these stereotypes that were existent before I was born, before my mom was born, were created, that it seems it's something that's inevitable. And everybody has different ways of thinking. I'm not afraid of any white person, no matter how many school shootings I hear. I'm not afraid of any Middle Eastern because of any terrorist attacks that occur. I'm wise enough to know that we are all people. We are skeptical, but we must put that aside and take into consideration that I am able and I am likely to do what this next person will do because of the fact that we are human, and not because I'm white or I'm black or I'm Latino or I'm Asian. We are all still human at the end of the day. And that's what the racism that exists occurs, that we have these stereotypes against us because of we're black or we're Asian and things like that. I think it's important to note that Black Lives Matter it does seem to be centered a lot around police brutality. I agree. My education that's in the side of the city that I'm from, the communities, the gangs and the violence and those things locally, I think those are things that should be understood, because Los Angeles isn't too far from Redondo Beach. I think those are things that we should focus more on as a community, as Redondo Union High School, than it to be police brutality. Nothing's necessarily happening in Los Angeles right now.